Welcome back to another edition of the Hops and Spirits Kentucky podcast. We have another fun interview for you this week. And don't forget, coming up in September, we'll be doing Whiskey Weeks, where we focus on what Kentucky might be known best for, and that is bourbon as part of National Bourbon Heritage Month. And before we get to our Q&A this week, our news and notes, as we send our thoughts and prayers out to everyone in eastern Kentucky affected by the flooding, the Kentucky Distillers Association, the Bourbon Crusaders charitable organization, and Fred Minnick are joining forces again, this time to support recovery and rebuilding efforts from the catastrophic flooding in eastern Kentucky. The Kentucky Bourbon Benefit will feature an online auction of exclusive private barrel selection experiences, rare and vintage experiences, and unique tasting and tourism offerings from Kentucky's distilling industry and hospitality and charitable partners. This partnership raised over $3 million back in December during a similar auction to help Western Kentucky residents and communities affected there by the tornadoes. The online auction begins Thursday, August 11th at noon Eastern, runs through Sunday, August 21st. Go to kybourbonbenefit.com to view auction items and bid. All proceeds will go directly to the state's official Team Eastern Kentucky Flood Relief Fund to assist those impacted by flooding. Lux Road Distilleries announced the newest member of the Davis County Bourbon brand family. Davis County Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey finished in lightly toasted American oak barrels. A limited allocation of this will reach retail shelves across the country later this month at an MSRP of $49.99 per bottle, coming in at 96 proof. The Davis County Lightly Toasted is the first in a series of annually offered toasted barrel finishes from the Davis County brand family, so look out for those. And for those beer fans out there, lager fans, I should say, fall fanatics, your favorite time of the year is here. That's right, the shelves of your local beer store should be seeing plenty of pumpkin beers, Oktoberfest, and fall-inspired beers hitting the shelves. West Six, Braxton, and many other breweries throughout the state have announced the return of their seasonal beers, so be on the lookout for those. And up next is our Q&A with Keegan McGee, head brewer at Turtleback Ridge Brewery and Farm in Robertson County. Enjoy.
Remember to check out Hops and Spirits on social media at Hops Spirits, all one word, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also find Hops and Spirits on YouTube and at hopsspirits.com.
Joining us here for our Q&A on the Hops and Spirits Kentucky podcast, he's the head brewer, and I believe he does pretty much everything else out there as well, and whatever is asked of him. Please welcome in Keegan McGee of Turtleback Ridge in Robertson County, Kentucky.
Thanks for having me out today. I'm looking forward to talking to you about what we're doing out here.
Well, and it seems like you guys are doing some cool things. And before I get into all of the things that you are doing out there at Turtleback Ridge, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I always like to, preface this with the Cliff Notes version, because I know some people can go on for a while on that question. It's a little bit loaded, but the Cliff Notes version of who you are and what you're doing out there.
Yeah, so I'm Keegan McGee. I am the head brewer at Turtleback Ridge. Like you mentioned, I do a myriad of things out here, but I actually grew up on this farm where the brewery is located. We moved down here when I was 3 years old. My parents still live here on the farm, and I went away to college, studied philosophy, and took my dad's home brewing equipment. And then after college, came back to the farm, and we got into several things, and one of them has become the brewery. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned it is a working farm out there. You guys are, I think when we were scheduling this, you're like, no, that week's not going to work. We're harvesting hops. We got this harvest. So, what's it like being part of a working farm with having a brewery there as well?
It's really exciting. It can be exhausting if I'm going to be completely honest, but it does lend itself to a lot of potential for kind of exploration and experimentation with the beer. The short story of the farm is my parents were homesteaders out here when I was growing up. My dad planted orchards and fruit gardens and vegetable gardens. The farm is largely a wooded farm, so we also tapped into maple trees, and we're just kind of trying to produce as much of the food that we were eating as possible. And then from that, the farm kind of evolved when I came back from college, and we started trying to turn some of the smaller scale homesteading of what they were doing into a slightly larger cottage industry that, I've been trying to make a living out of. And the brewery is just the next step in that whole project. So.
And I was going to say, I mean, as you guys expanded, what made you decide that a brewery was a good idea? I mean, besides your love of probably home brewing, and I think your dad being a craft beer lover as well.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is economics. Beer and alcohol have better margins than produce, so there was somewhat of a market incentive. It's also here in Robertson County, there are not a lot of public gathering spaces, particularly for adults. I mean, obviously there are schools and the library and things. So, one of the projects I felt like I was on when coming back out here was building community, and opening a tap room and a brewery sort of facilitated having a public space for those gatherings and long-winded conversations and just that community building project. So kind of twofold there, the market incentive and being able to generate more revenue for the amount of time we were spending on whatever we were producing, and then also the ability to welcome people in a kind of structured way that facilitates community building in this kind of small region of Kentucky. So.
Well, and I think at first you were brewing beer, but you really didn't have the tap room built out. And when you're able to do that, how did things change for y'all, and what's it like actually having it on the farm and people can see it all, when they come out there?
It's really exciting. It's been a very hands-on process going from that home brewing to having the brewery and the tap room built. My dad and I, with the help of some good friends locally, done a lot of construction. So yeah, I mean, back in the home brewing days, it was still community building. We had a smaller community at that point. We were mostly hanging out with people that we had already known, and we're sharing beer. And I was kind of with this idea of a brewery in mind, developing recipes, and we did have some tastings. And so it was kind of a similar vibe, but now that network has just expanded, and anyone who's interested in kind of coming out and getting to know us, they can do so. So it's sort of just the nature of the scale of the thing, which, I mean, admittedly, can be a little strange, having this have been my childhood homestead and then opening up to the public, but by and large, it's been an overwhelmingly positive experience. And it seems like the community is enjoying the space, and we're enjoying kind of branching out. And I feel like we are developing a pretty strong community center there at the tap room. So, it's been overwhelmingly positive and a little strange. So,
well, and the coolest part too is that I think when I first heard about Turtleback Ridge was through the farmers market down here in Lexington, where I'm based. And I think at the time you may have had 2 or 3 options that you could bring down and do. And now you've got kind of an actual full tap list. How have you guys been able to build up to that point of not just having 1 or 2 beers, but having 8, 9, 10 beers that you guys can serve that are yours?
Yeah, sure. Some of the logistics and why we would have only had a few at the market was just all that hauling kegs around and working out of a jockey box was somewhat limiting. And I love the work, but hauling too many kegs around was kind of crazy. But also, after last season was our first actual year of having the tap room open, and it wasn't really a full year, so I didn't have a great sense of exactly how much product I would need throughout any given part of the year. And so I would end up having fewer beers because I was kind of hesitant to make too much beer that I would sit on. But then after having last season, I could kind of start to see the writing on the wall where I could use a lot more product. So over the winter, where we actually closed for January and February, just because of the nature of the space is largely outdoors. That's also when our maple season's happening. So it's a time that we kind of take a break from being open to the public. But that period of time allowed me to really produce as much of the flagship beers like our Kolsch and Oatmeal Stout and things like that, so that I would have that available throughout the season. But also during that time, I was able to start a little bit more playful experimentation with pulling things from the woods. So using wild rose root out of the woods and spice bush. I mean, we always have used maple sap and maple syrup in a few different beers that we make during that season. This past year, I actually incorporated toasted maple bark. So yeah, some of it was just learning the model and getting used to the equipment and learning how to turn things over and figuring out how often I needed to be brewing. And then once you add that diversity, you know, it's allowed me to kind of keep up with it. As long as I have a couple flagships that are always going to be there, then I will typically have a little bandwidth in my fermentation space to be a little bit more experimental and playful with some of the off flagship beers that we have. So.
Well, and with those off flagships and so forth, and you touched on it, you're able to actually go and source and use the land. I mean, how cool is it to be able to do that? And also not just do it kind of like what people would think of like, oh, it was strawberries, or oh, it's maple syrup, but like you mentioned, it's ginger, you know, roots and different varieties of plants and so forth. And what's that like?
It's really gratifying. That aspect of brewing and being able to integrate forage things from the farm is kind of where I get the most joy in the brewing process. I feel like it helps me stay creative and stay out of ruts. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun to learn about all the things in the woods that, I mean, even I growing up out here was not necessarily familiar with the plethora of things that are edible, and the fact that you can dig up a wild rose root. And I mean, even if you're not making beer, you could make a little tea and it actually has the fragrance of rose in it, or the spice bush, or, you know, all the wild mushrooms, which we haven't done that with beer yet, but you never know. So kind of just, it keeps my creative juices flowing. I have a lot of fun with it. I think it really makes the experience of coming to our tap room kind of, it all sort of clicks together. I think if you see a beer with wild rose root on tap in the middle of the city, like, maybe it's a great beer, but I think being able to be like, yeah, that's the part of the woods where I went and got it, really makes it click. Like, this is like very much a beer from the land. And that, you know, that's sort of my ideal beer is one, you know, or just that's the kind of the underlying philosophy for a lot of those experimental things is trying to sort of, with the local food movement, but turning it to local beer, and even getting down to the more experimental and exciting things like using roots and barks and berries that we're unfamiliar with and things like that. I have a lot of fun with it, in short.
Well, I was gonna say, you can see that you enjoy it, and I think that probably comes through in the beer. And it's not just, you know, your land that you guys work with. You work with farmers from the county and the region, and how important is it to kind of be able to showcase what they can grow that you guys might not have on the farm?
Very important. Yeah, I mean, we've had up until recently a farmhouse saison with local blackberries from a farm, Cedar Hill Farms over in Nicholas County, which is just a few miles down the road from us. So that kind of question sort of ties back into the community building aspect of what I want to do. I do think that small businesses in places like these can only benefit from building up their network and relying on each other. And also, you know, not only are you going to benefit from that, the community aspect of that, but you're also going to create products that are very much a product of a specific time and a place, and not just something that could be commodified and replicated all over the world, or, you know, what have you. It's something that is kind of special and unique to this place, and will be ephemeral by nature and be different the next season, even if you use some of the same farms and different things. So, I mean, it's been really great getting to know, there again, some people that have been our neighbors for years, but maybe we didn't bump into at the right time, and now been able work with Cedar Hill. I mean, Sunflower Stories is one. I use her heirloom Hickory King corn in our farmhands table, which is a table farmhouse beer. Yeah, there are other farms I'm definitely neglecting to mention, but it's really important to me to utilize those resources around us, and it creates a symbiotic thing where if they have hundreds of pounds of blackberries that they can't sell, or that maybe they could, but it's a lot easier for them to say, oh, well, Turtleback Ridge Brewery can use 150 pounds of blackberries, no problem. Whereas a given household, it might make themselves sick if they ate that many pounds of blackberries.
Or they're having blackberry
I think
jam, blackberry
it's
salsa, blackberry everything.
right. Yeah. And another way that we incorporate those, which I would love to mention on this podcast, just so people that might not be super into beer could still feel welcome to come out, is we always have a seasonal non-alcoholic soda that we make. And the blackberries made me think of it because right now we have a blackberry vanilla soda on. So for those folks, maybe you hang out with people that drink beer, or you just want to come out and check out a unique farmstead setting, but you're not necessarily wanting to have a beer. There's always going to be something for you to try out and not just be stuck drinking water or what have you.
That's awesome. And you've expanded that, kind of building a community beyond just your actual community there, but you guys collab a lot with breweries around the state, and how cool is it to work with those folks and be able to create beers with them and showcase all the different things that each can bring to the table?
It's been very cool. I've kind of had a moment of pause when I got to collaborate with Against the Grain, and I met Jerry, one of the brewers down there. And, I went to school in Louisville at U of L. So I went down to that tap room at the ballpark with the glass walls where you can see the big brew house maybe more times than I would like to admit during college. And so, finally getting to climb up into that brew house and be there was really kind of surreal and gratifying and super cool. But also, getting to know people from Ethereal in Lexington. We're actually which is a tie-in to the Void Sake Company. I think we might have a collab coming out with them sometime soon. And then working with our good friends at Sawstone Brewing down in Moorhead is always a joy. They're actually old friends of mine. Those kind of things, they always they feel like coming home, because you're always hanging out with people that are interested in the same things. It stirs up creativity. You make new friends. You make cherished memories. I met people in Louisville that probably were there when I was there, but never ran into them, from Shippingport Brewery or Brewing Company, I think they go by, and released a really cool forage beer. And they came out and we picked dandelions and dug up dandelion root and spruce tips and made a really fun, interesting beer. So yeah, there again, just the community building aspect of that, and getting to know new people and push the boundaries of what people understand to be beer is just super cool and super fun. I'm lucky to be doing what I'm doing.
Well, and those are cool people too, like you mentioned, Jerry and others that have been doing this for a while that you can pick up knowledge from. But too, how much fun is it to experiment and see what others can when you can come up with a recipe, like you mentioned, going out and picking dandelions. It's not just a song, it can be put into a beer, and and something cool can happen.
Yeah, it's very fun. That beer, I don't know how many iterations and conversations and different people had input to make that happen. And I think, brewing by yourself, which I do a lot of, but you can kind of end up in that isolation tank of your own thoughts, and talking and hanging out with other people can sort of jostle that up and put you into new places that are really interesting and unique, and very tasty most often.
Well, and that's the key at the end of the day. And I mentioned that the first time I got to experience Turtleback Ridge was at the farmers market. And what's it like getting to come down to, say, Lexington or someplace else and be able to share your beer with folks that may not even know that there's a place up in Robertson County?
Yeah, so I mean, big shout out to Lexington Farmers Market because they totally saved our butt at the beginning of the pandemic, and being able to join in there and get to meet people like you, among many others, and put our name in a place that probably, I mean, would maybe not even have known that Robertson County was a county because we're so small and there's not a lot here. So it was, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of gratitude to the farmers market. They really helped us survive that first year of the pandemic. And I think we built a network of people down there that were interested in what we were doing and maybe would have not have heard of it very readily if not. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mentioned earlier that it was kind of a lot of work in the logistics, but I hope to get to the point where I might have the staff that we could get back to doing more of those things with the tap room opening. And the labor force is largely me. I have a good friend who's the head bartender, and then my dad and my mom help out. So we don't have a large staff that we can send out to a lot of different events all the time. But I hope to build up to the point where we could have more presence in those places in the future. Right now, we're focused on building up this space that we have, because we think that experience of here is really what kind of sets us apart in the market of craft beer in Kentucky.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's not too many homesteads and farms that you can go to and experience a beer that's made, from stuff there and is that's its home. And when people get to go out to the farm, what can they expect, and what can they expect at the brewery?
First thing to expect is a half-mile gravel road. So we are, so don't get freaked out when you turn onto that road. And we actually, our neighbor is an old junk man. So you're going to turn onto a gravel road, there's going to be a lot of metal and things. And that's actually a sign that you're going the right way. Uh, so you keep trucking past all that, back that half-mile gravel road, and eventually you'll kind of pass through into some woodlands, and then you'll keep going, and it'll open up into this area. There'll be some obvious seating, and then the tap room, the brew house building will be there on your left. So yeah, we have a small, intimate little indoor space. Our venue is largely set in being outside. Like, it's all about hanging out in the fields or even going for a walk in the woods. We're working on having hiking and mountain biking trails out here. And so taking a walk and kind of getting engaged in the farm space is really what we're about as far as how the space is laid out. So there's lots of outdoor seating. We do have a large back deck that's covered, so if it's rainy or sunny, you can get out of the weather. There are some bar stools inside too. But we're having live music the first Saturday of every month, coming up to until October. Once the weather starts to break, that gets trickier for us. But you can expect 8 taps, sometimes as many as 9 or 10 of our own beers. Going to be varying in style and taste from, our kind of our flagship Kolsch, which is just the easygoing thing. And we always have the oatmeal stout. Typically you're going to have an IPA, and then from there you're going to start to get into those more experimental farmhouse, wild forage things. You're going to meet, more than likely you'll meet Jen, our head bartender. She's very knowledgeable. She's very friendly. She'll be happy to help talk you through any of the beers that you have questions about, or do flights and samples. And you can expect it. I think one of the things about our space that is maybe is unique is a really open clientele. Like, it feels like when you hang out there, like you're kind of hanging out with everybody. I mean, you can certainly get off and get a little space yourself, but if you're inclined to, you can strike up a conversation with just about anybody who's there, and find something interesting to talk about, and meet somebody new that you maybe never would have known otherwise. So that kind of conviviality, and that sense of like, it's like Cheers, except everybody's welcome. There's not like a group of people, it's like so yeah. And like I said, we're trying to do live music as much as we can. Periodically we'll have stargazing events. We have pretty dark skies out here. We have a local friend that'll set up a telescope, and you can see some pretty high definition views of the planets and various stars and galaxies and nebula. What else do we do out here? yeah, I mean, I mentioned the hiking and mountain biking trails, and yeah, I mean, you'll be in a farmstead, so there'll be gardens, there'll be orchards, there'll be a lot of trees around you. Be kind of an off the beaten trail, what I like to think of as a gym. Other people have said that, so I don't feel like I'm being too arrogant to say it. But yeah.
As long as you can make sure you trust yourself going out the gravel road, you'll be great, and you'll get to see that community that you guys have been able to build. And
Yeah.
and the other part is being in Robertson County and kind of being able to bring people there. I mean, how rewarding is that to kind of, in some instances, give folks a taste of Robertson County that they may never have known was there?
Oh, it's very rewarding. I think, it's great to be able to be a part of this small community and feel like we are contributing something that is like good to the space. And yeah, I mean, it's been home for me since I was 4 years old. So, and I find it to be a very, diverse and beautiful county, as small as it is. So yeah, being able to welcome people in and share that with them feels really special, and is a big part of why I wanted to have that, open to the tap room, or open to the public tap room that we do have. There's also, in Robertson County, as far as places to check out and reasons to be here, we have a really nice state park in Blue Lick State Park. There are hiking trails there. They have a lodge. They have cabins. It was Blue Lick's Battlefield State Park, so there's a lot of history there. They do have a nice museum. So that's another thing to check out in the local area. And more there are actually, Airbnbs cropping up. So there are more things happening in Robertson County than almost I would have ever expected. So yeah, it's been really rewarding to be out here and be able to do something that I love and get to share it with people is really wonderful.
And as we wrap up, Turtleback Ridge Farm and Brewery, if you're looking them up online, they're on social media as well. And I believe you're open Friday and Saturdays right now. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, Friday will be open from 5 to 10 p.m. and then Saturdays we're open from noon until 10 p.m.
So you mentioned you got maybe some collaborations coming down the line with some different folks. What else can folks expect maybe the rest of the year from y'all? Before Mother Nature requires you to kind of go into a little bit of hibernation, so to speak. Anything fun?
Yeah, well, like I said, we got the shows going on the first Saturdays. We will have sort of, once we get into the holiday season, we do start kind of on Small Business Saturday. We'll have a local vendor market. So we'll bring in craft people and artists, and we really enjoy in the area and have their stuff set up. And then we'll kind of continue that until we get close to Christmas. So that would be something to look out for. We probably will have a couple of star parties coming on. And then I should mention, every time that we're having live music, we will have a food vendor set up so you can come out and eat and drink and be merry. You don't have to worry about bringing in your own food. So yeah, for this year, that's the largest part of it. I kind of wanted to pitch that we're hoping to, by next season, actually have a permanent food truck that has a rotating list of chefs and kind of be able to have food available every time that we're open. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully we'll pull it off.
Well, I mean, you guys have been able to grow pretty quickly, for being a true family outfit, and kind of a couple man band, or a couple person band, so to speak. So it's been impressive to see what you guys have been able to do, and being able to put out some good beer too.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I hope to have you out to the tap room sometime soon.
That is my goal. Hopefully, to make a visit out there sometime before the end of the year. And Keegan, this was a blast, and thanks for sharing the story of Turtleback Ridge.
Yeah, thanks for your interest, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure talking to you.